Welcome back into another XRP pod. Today we're going to be diving into the market. Joining me, of course, is Mr. Evan Aldo. How are you, Evan?
I'm doing great. Loving the summer, man. Loving it so far until the market took its tiny little dip in the past couple
Yeah,
days, but it is what it is.
a little bit. And I think there are some things that we will get into today. We will be charting a handful of things within the stock market. We'll also get into some stuff around Bitcoin, Ethereum. But best of all, we're going to be talking about XRP and Clarity. Does it need it? Meaning Ripple. Do they need Clarity to pass to really kind of achieve all of their goals? So stick around for that one. Let's just jump into it today. All right, Evan, let's start off with the first thing I want to focus on is a couple of stocks. And
Mhm.
one of them that has been on my radar for some time has been Netflix. And it's one of those stocks that I feel just has the opportunity, but then they go out and they get a Q2 revenue bump, but they missed a little bit on the forecast. And because of that, the market punished them. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's just a ridiculous amount when you look at the kind of impact that this thing has. Right now, shares are down 50% over the
Mm.
past year. So, first of all, would you trade on Netflix right now? Would you try to buy this bottom or what do you think?
Everybody's talking about, and everybody's been talking about buying this dip for a long time, Paul, which makes me a little bit worried about it. I mean, from a perspective of the 200 weekly SMA, which is a really good point, right around $70. At this very moment, probably not, but if we can reclaim 70 and start to look
Uh-huh.
better here and potentially get a bullish divergence, as you can see right here, then I would be very inclined. Or if we do
Okay.
jump to like 58, that would be attractive. So I think it's a little bit early. You do have your 2 week. If you see here, these EMAs are turning gray, which historically here, you had one more kind of drop down during this, Renaissance cascade in 2022. So historically, it does, you're kind of there, but not quite. You do have more competition for Netflix, a lot of other companies now. So that's my concern. I think it's a little bit early
So
at
you
this
feel like
point.
this can go down a little bit longer.
Potentially.
All
And,
right.
for my style of investing and trading, I think it's a little bit early. So yeah.
Interesting. All right. With that being the case, and you look at the impact on general markets, so some people would say, well, there's also some pressure coming in from China. This right here just kind of showcases some big issues that's happening within China right now. Their stock market lost almost 4.2, almost 4.3 trillion in a single day. If you look at, and this is every major Asian stock market right now closed in the red. So, what we're seeing right now on the open market, at least here in the US, is a little bit of a green day, but also somewhat stable. I think this is two things. One is the issue of geopolitical energy shock still resonating from Strait of Hormuz. You've got TSMC, which is the Taiwan, semiconductor companies looking at putting a lot of capital into US plants. So we would continue to see supply chain anxiety start to pressure China. And then you have, of course, monetary policy, which is, of course, shifting globally. When you look at that and compare other things that are happening here in the US, and I'll show this as well because Apple just jumped ahead of Nvidia. Is it a good time to be in stocks right now, Evan? Apple's up, Nvidia slid behind. You've got a handful of semiconductor markets moving. What do you think?
I think that the better time to be in things like NVIDIA, for example, Apple's a little bit different, but NVIDIA semiconductors, I think it's going to go for a general bear market for around 8 months. So I think end of year, early next year. And I think that'll align with the window of opportunity, the prime opportunity that I think we'll see on SpaceX too, right around the end of this year, early next year. If we look at my chart, I want to show you if we look at, let me just get it up here. If we look at like NVIDIA, for example, now a lot of consolidation. NVIDIA, the thing that I want to look at for NVIDIA is Bitcoin versus NVIDIA. And I wanted to show you an important thing here because what's the alternative if you're, not going to buy Apple or NVIDIA? Probably Bitcoin, a lot of people would think about. And look at where we are on your Bitcoin versus NVIDIA evaluation.
Okay.
The same low from January of 2017. and look what happened there.
Mm,
Bitcoin outperformed Nvidia for a whole year there, basically. So I think we may see something similar where Bitcoin can outperform Nvidia for at least the next 6 to 12 months. That's what I'm looking at as well. And Apple, that's jumping up. I think Apple probably will outperform Nvidia and AI and, semiconductors for 6 to 8 months at least. But I would probably still rather buy Bitcoin than Apple just because of, this general valuation here. Bitcoin getting a big drop against Apple and hitting kind of this big area. And I think this is a
right.
good deal. Bitcoin's now down almost 70% against Apple. I think it's a much better deal to be buying Bitcoin
If you're
over
trying to
Apple.
buy the bottom, yeah,
Yeah.
or near the bottom, buying these dips within
Yeah.
that. What about Ethereum? If we're looking at, well, before we do that, let's before we get to the Ethereum, let's chart Bitcoin real quickly because
Mhm.
we have had a pullback here recently. Some of this I think is more macro headwinds. Some of this could be the beginning of this pullback that everybody's been anticipating. Where do you see Bitcoin right now?
Yeah. Bitcoin right now, I think we're still okay so far. I mean, we're forming like kind of a large consolidation area. Like you see, you consolidate a while.
Yep.
This is a very large, I'm not the biggest like head and shoulder guy or reverse head and shoulder guy, but I know one when I see one. There's certain times. So see how it took this amount of time to kind of consolidate and you broke downward. I think we're still going to break upward. Within a week,
Interesting.
we almost got 2 weeks to go. And if we look at our daily right here, your 200 daily SMA is at 73K. By the time you potentially hit that, and I think you may hit that around the end of the month, 70K is still my goal for the end of this month. I don't see any
Interesting.
reason to believe we won't hit it. Also, your 200 SMA on the weekly is
Mm,
currently at around 60, right where we are right now, actually. So we're testing that. Hopefully, we can hold that around 62.8. And if we can, I would remain more optimistic here. So, yeah.
yeah. So optimistic on Bitcoin through summer, which is typically a little bit more of a lull,
Mhm.
even though we are trading at 63 this morning as we record this. Let's talk about Ethereum because it got dangerously close to $2,000 again and
Yep.
then has pulled back, of course. ETH getting a lot of love from a lot of people in terms of what's happening on Robinhood chain. You've got Tom Lee pumping it. Where do you stand on Ethereum right now? Is this the better play versus Bitcoin, or where would you go versus those two assets?
Well, let's start off with ETH versus Bitcoin here because, this is noteworthy. The 3 week, you're seeing a momentum shift, similar to kind of how you saw in May of last year, and then you had a big jump. This is looking really good. You got your money flow coming up, just major momentum shifts all across the
Yeah,
board here, which makes me optimistic on this pair. And, you always need an invalidation point. If we lose the lows from May, then I would be less optimistic on this. But right now I think it makes sense to have a position in ETH. It makes a
okay,
lot of sense to have a position in ETH right now. And if we go on ETH itself, you're seeing a momentum shift on your 2 week, it looks good overall. The invalidation for that would be losing obviously the May lows. I don't
right.
really know if I'm going to like this if it goes down to 1400 because I want to be making higher lows. If you're going back down to where you were, March of 25, that may not be the best thing for this, but so far so good. It doesn't look like
Do
that'll
you
happen.
and do you anticipate a low here on ETH?
No, I think, my base case is that we bottomed. I think 1,500 should be good, and ETH could have
Okay,
bottomed before Bitcoin. Bitcoin could go lower,
yeah,
while and that's already happened. It actually bottomed before Bitcoin, here, during these, June lows, I think. So, we're already seeing that momentum shift. More short term, I think this is just consolidation. We may retest, 1,750, and I think that, something like this would happen, and if Bitcoin hits 70K, I think ETH easily could hit 2,100 by the
yeah,
end of this month. Um, People are probably wondering, what would happen, in August, September. I think you'll see more consolidation, maybe back to these areas, which summer is normally kind of boring, and then hopefully quarter 4 end of year, 2,400 to 2,700 by end of year. I'd be hoping for. So yeah,
right, yeah. Well, 24 to 27 would be a significant movement, and I think
yeah,
that's something to kind of wow, 24 to 27. I'm just wondering where Bitcoin would be at that time.
80 to 90K, 80 to
Yeah,
90K. Yeah,
okay. Well, you got someone else in the Bitcoin market right now. You got BlackRock's holdings have increased significantly as they are starting to catch Michael Saylor at Strategy. So they're right now the ETF holds 734,000 Bitcoin. That's basically 47 billion and it's rapidly closing the gap. So I don't know, BlackRock becoming the big guy in the room, a lot of pressure. You saw the Larry Fink, we showed a clip of this yesterday of him saying he's still very bullish. But then you have to kind of correlate back to Tom Lee earlier last month saying that he still feels we are maybe 30 days away from a potential major pullback. So I don't know. This is going to get intriguing because you got Wall Street playing in this game pretty heavily.
Yeah, all the billionaires are not too happy that Michael Saylor controls what 5% of all the Bitcoin. There's a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
competition. It's not going well for Saylor. I'll say that in the short term. Obviously, MicroStrategy keeps bleeding against Bitcoin. I think a lot of the treasury companies and proxies are a bit oversaturated. That's something to be, careful with. It kind of reminds me of buying, some of these crappy altcoins back in 2022. A
Right.
lot of the ones that kept going down, like your Cardanos or your Polkadots or, so on and so forth. So be careful with the
Yeah.
proxies right now, I would say, definitely.
Interesting. Well, to your point, the billionaires don't like it. You've got right now the richest Americans have never controlled this much wealth before. So national income
Mm,
measurements are way up. It's more than quadrupled since 2008. Let me show you guys a chart right there. That is unbelievable. Coming in from 1980. Remember, the big dip was really from the 1920 crash, falling all the way down into the 1980s, which was the low point of wealthy individuals. And now you've absolutely exploded. This was, of course, between 1980 and 2000 was kind of the birth of the internet. That lull was after the dot bomb and then the explosion that we saw and are continuing to see right now after the COVID bump. So I don't know. Do you expect a pullback on this? I'm just kind of, I don't
so,
know, man.
yeah,
Wealth begets wealth.
I've studied this a little bit, wealth and inequality, and I feel like this chart's a little bit worse than it actually is because it was pretty bad in the 1920s before the Great Depression. It was pretty bad
Exactly.
then
Yeah.
too. I think that chart's showing making it look a little bit worse than it is, in my opinion. You when you have asset, when you have recessions, the S&P 500 crashes 50%. That's
Mhm.
the biggest thing that actually lessens wealth inequality, believe it or not, because the poorest Americans, they don't really have stocks. They're just holding cash
Exactly.
and it
Yeah.
hits the billionaires, the hardest.
The
I
hardest.
think
Yeah.
when you finally get that, to answer your question, when I think, when will that happen? 2, 3, 4 years, end of this decade, maybe early next decade, you'll see that drop down, that 40 to 50% correction for the S&P 500. So yeah.
Speaking of wealthy people front running, I should say. What do you think about this right here? Trump Media now is going to sell sell access to this to Trump's social tweets faster. So basically be able to front run. And this guy is putting out signals left and right for what to
Yeah.
buy into. What do you think about this?
Oh man.
This
I
is
mean,
crazy, man.
yeah, it is crazy. Anything to make a penny. And I think, I was reading the book The Psychology of Wealth, which is actually a really good book. And they were saying like, the examples of like the Bernie Madoffs and all these people, it's like they had so much money already. It's just the addiction. They just want more and more, and
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
never enough. I think that's what
Yeah.
this is.
They
Yeah.
can't lean back in and just
Yeah.
relax and try to be
Exactly.
philanthropic, give back to
Yep.
the communities. That's the problem, I think is the bigger one. And if we would see more of that out in the open, I think it would change people's viewpoint of billionaires. If they were really, because a lot of them claim they do good, but you just don't see it at the community level.
Yeah.
And that's something that is unfortunate for sure. Hey, we're going to talk about clarity today. Before we get into clarity, though, I want to go to one more token because there are some opportunities here before we start to see clarity coming out of this. One of the tokens that I think will benefit the most out of clarity is going to be Solana. If Solana, because there's going to be all sorts of projects I think that will start launching. When you look at the Solana chart right now, Evan, where would you put the low before we see a move on Solana? Do you feel like it still has a pullback ahead of it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Solana I like right now. I mean, this could be it is losing this major area right around 74. So I could see a little bit more of a drop down to 71, maybe even retesting these points, but I'm still pretty optimistic on Solana. I think it's more just a healthy correction. Hopefully we jump here
Interesting.
actually, but
Yeah.
it does look a little bit ugly. I mean, you're testing this area which is pretty big, getting the wick down. So I'm pretty optimistic on Solana. I do think we eventually, should jump. I could even see hopefully 90 by the end of this month if all goes well.
Wow.
Like when it's,
Okay. You like
70K.
so you're very
Yeah.
bullish on Solana then. Very
To a
bullish.
certain extent, but let me show you Bitcoin. So Solana versus Bitcoin. This is a better chart, to be more optimistic on Solana because monthly, kind of trend reversal momentum shift right here. Look at this green Heikin-Ashi candle. This doesn't happen, too often.
Okay.
Similar to kind of July of 2023, where you had a big kind of rally against Bitcoin there, and it looks like it's just making a healthy correction against Bitcoin. This chart looks better, like it looks better on its Bitcoin evaluation than its
Yeah.
USD evaluation. So yeah, Solana looks good. I mean, I hold more ETH than Solana, but Solana is my number 3. Yeah.
I like it. Okay, so moving off of Solana, I want to talk a little bit about clarity and what this might mean for a lot of, potential opportunities here. One of the biggest ones that I continue to point at has been the issue where we are dealing with, I would say, maybe one of the most pivotal times in our history. And that is if we get clarity through, this is going to completely shift the dynamic of the financial markets. So here was a tweet I put out: prediction markets now slashing the odds of clarity. This is down to 30%. It's all time low. And that's even with the financial services meeting that's happening right now. So, literally, as today, this morning, as we're recording. So, you've got this financial services meeting. You've got the big pressure points, which really boil down to three: developer protections, stablecoin, and ethics. What is your opinion right now on clarity going through?
Yeah, I mean, 30% betting odds is still like it can happen. I'm definitely less optimistic. I'm hoping that they pull it off. I'm really hoping that they pull it off and everything shoots up and you see Bitcoin up to 70 to 74K by the end of this month if it does happen within the next 2 weeks. So, very cautious optimism here. If the betting odds go anything under 30% on Polymarket, I think that that's nail in the coffin and it's not going to happen. But 30% does happen. I see a lot of 30% things that do end up happening. So 3 out of 10
Yeah.
times. So yeah.
Well, that would definitely somebody's gonna make some money on Polymarket if that occurs. You've probably heard me mention Uphold before, and there's a reason I keep talking about them. Uphold makes it incredibly easy to bridge the gap between your portfolio and the real world. This has not been done before. Their Uphold Debit Card is the best example of that. It lets you spend your crypto or your cash anywhere Visa is accepted, all while earning 4% back in XRP on every purchase. It's the easiest way to stack rewards on your daily spending. Download the Uphold app for more and get started. Here was
Yeah.
a video from this morning's meeting that has already started. This is just to give you guys a taste of what they are talking about, because this is a critical meeting right now between most of the, I think, well, to a certain extent, there are a handful of lawmakers that weren't invited. We'll get into that in a second.
The first Congress, and 1 year to the day after the House of Representatives passed the Clarity Act, we gather amongst the pillars of history. For 250 years, American markets have powered innovation and economic growth. And each time technology and financial innovation leapt forward, Congress met the moment.
All right, so I want to stop it there and say this. They are doing this right now, this meeting. Either this is going to be the biggest egg on their face if this does not go through, because they're, claiming that the pillars of innovation, here on the 250th year kind of approach here in the sense of just sensationalizing this. If this doesn't go through, man, this is going to look so bad on
Yeah.
Congress and our lawmakers. What do you think happens? Do you think Trump takes a big black eye if this does not go through?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, Trump's approval rating is pretty low to begin with. A lot of people, that wanted him to stay out of wars, that liked him because he stayed out of
Yeah,
wars, have already lost respect. So at this point, I don't know if it matters. He's only got 2 years left. People will be annoyed, but I don't think it's going to matter that much. It probably
interesting.
will hurt the market. Obviously things like Circle probably won't do too well. It probably will hurt the market a little bit. But I don't think it's the end of the world.
All right, well, there you go, because the end of the world may be happening somewhere else. And that, of course, is over in Europe. Mika has now added 14 new crypto firms, including, guess who? Ripple Payments in Europe. Ripple's already been approved and now has Ripple Payments approved. So this is another one. This brings crypto service providers up to 294. Remember, they had about 3,000 companies that were operating inside the confines of the EU prior to Mika enacting, which happened earlier this month. That has now been drawn down to 10% of all those companies, less than 300. Ripple's might be on a move here. When you look at XRP, and I'll show you one other note right quick. Um, XRP is trading a little bit softer right now because I think that we continue to see pressure on clarity. But overall, Evan, while you're pulling up the chart, I
Yeah.
don't know if XRP or Ripple is that dependent on clarity going through. What do you think
No,
on
I
the
would
chart?
say it's yeah, I would say it's a little less. I mean, I think XRP, you got a good shot of potentially having bottomed out here. You're still below your 200 weekly SMA, which is around 120, but you're kind of looking a little bit better in terms of, similar to Bitcoin, these patterns normally, or reverse head and shoulders normally does break upward, which I like right here. So I would remain more optimistic on XRP, and I think we should be able to break up to 120 potentially if things go well. You got your daily 200 SMA is all the way at 143
Yeah,
right there. So it's interesting to look at. I also want to show you XRP versus Bitcoin, which is an important chart to look at here. It's kind of consolidating around this level, this area right here. So you could see some upward, potentially here. Fair warning, I mean, I don't own XRP personally right now because there's not much momentum on the Bitcoin chart yet. I'm in Solana and ETH instead, but if you see more momentum and see a jump here, I'll get into XRP. I think it could be just a little bit earlier. I'm waiting for some of the momentum shifts to start showing
interesting.
on like the 3 week and the monthly here.
Yeah.
But I do think XRP is definitely, I think there's a case to be made for Clarity not passing and XRP still doing okay. So yeah.
Well, the thing is, if Clarity Act fails to pass the Senate, the impact on Ripple really represents kind of a bit of a paradox because it's going to
Mm,
stunt Ripple's broader commercial expansion in the U.S. That's just going to be done, but it wouldn't affect XRP because it's already been ruled on. So they have kind of this legal shield that remains intact versus some tokens, including Solana, Ethereum, that could easily get back into, a situation with either the CFTC or even the SEC. So because remember, CFTC, SEC are still going to be writing rules and guidelines. I anticipate they're going to be very pro crypto and there may be some opportunity there for Ripple, but institutional roadblock for sure. Ripple's business model, I think, relies primarily on the broad U.S. financial sector integration. So if they don't get clarity, I think this is a big hit on Ripple, the company. I don't
mm,
think it has as much of an effect on XRP, but it definitely doesn't put XRP in a growth mode for going forward. So
mm.
tough times ahead right now. And I think the pivot would also happen because, and maybe that's why we're seeing Ripple payments starting to light up in Europe, is that Europe may become the new home for Ripple. So if in fact we don't get clarity,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
you could still see some pressure maybe after the midterms, but I just don't know if that is going to be a situation. The poly market has it up slightly this morning at back at 35% after
That's
it
that's
dipped.
big. That's
Yeah.
big.
So maybe that's a good little move from 31 to 35 this morning. Mainly, I think that's probably coming in from the hearings because they're starting to trickle out some videos from there for sure. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Evan, we're going to be doing more of these kinds of shows here for you guys on the podcast. And if you do like the trading, let us know in the comments down below. What tokens do you want us to bring up in the next round with Evan? Just drop them in the comments down below. And we'll try to abide by your requests out there. Evan, you got anything planned for the weekend, or is it going to be easy for you since you're
So I got a
traveling?
wedding. Yeah, I got a wedding tomorrow. I'm gonna play golf with one of my friends in about 2 hours. So,
Oh
I'm in
man, you're
Connecticut
just
right
living the
now.
dream.
Yeah, and then I'm
Yeah.
heading back to Miami next week.
Back in Miami. Well, we'll have you in studio pretty soon, so that'll be
Yep.
good. We got to get together when you're here, and you're going to be in Miami
That'd be
for a
great.
few months, so that's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your opinion next week on the Fed FOMC meeting? What do you think Porsche is going to do?
I think they're gonna pause obviously, but he's gonna sound more optimistic, I think, because he got
Okay.
better numbers. He's gonna
All
sound
right.
more optimistic.
Let's wait and see. If he
Yeah,
does, that'll pop the market
I
for
think
sure.
so. I think so. That's my
All
hunch.
right,
Yeah.
guys. You know what to do. Make sure like, subscribe. If you're not following Evan Aldo out on YouTube, make sure and do that as well. Just put the XRP pod where you came from. We will catch you next time right here on the XRP pod. Take care.